Hey guys, tonight we are going to slip quietly into the stone corridors of a medieval castle and drift through the daydreams of a queen who was famous for her gentle forgetfulness and whimsical imagination. If you're hoping for jousts or dramatic betrayals, you might want to look elsewhere here. The only thing sharper than a sword is the queen's ability to lose track of time, and the only thing at risk is a royal decree about nap times. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this era, not because of any grand danger, but because the endless feasts, chilly stone floors, and the queen's habit of wandering off mid-conversation would leave you hopelessly confused before the first bell of the day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And since I'm always curious, comment below with your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little kingdom reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the gates of a grand, mist-shrouded castle. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of moss, old stone, and a hint of wood smoke from the kitchens. The castle walls rise before you, their gray stone softened by creeping ivy and the gentle glow of lanterns. A pair of sleepy guards nod you through, barely glancing up from their mugs of spiced cider. One of them yawns so widely you half expect his helmet to fall off. As you step inside, the world grows quieter, the sounds of the village fading behind you. The castle courtyard is a patchwork of cobblestones and puddles, the morning mist curling around your ankles like a curious cat. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorts, its breath clouding in the chilly air, and a bell tolls softly from a distant tower, as if even time itself is reluctant to wake up. You walk beneath an archway, your footsteps echoing in the stillness. The castle is waking slowly, servants moving with the careful quiet of people who know their queen values peace above all else. A kitchen maid hums a lullaby as she carries a basket of warm bread, and a gardener pauses to watch a robin hop along the frosty grass. The whole place feels wrapped in a gentle hush, as if the walls themselves are still half asleep. Historians agree that medieval castles were bustling centers of life, filled with noise, business, and the constant clatter of armor and boots. But what most people don't know is that some castles, like this one, moved at the pace of their ruler. The most daydreaming queen in history was known for her love of quiet mornings, her fondness for wandering the halls in her slippers, and her habit of pausing mid-sentence to watch the clouds drift by. Historians still wonder if her dreamy nature was a clever way to avoid boring meetings, or if she simply preferred the company of her own thoughts. You pause at a fountain in the center of the courtyard, its water trickling softly over mossy stones. A pair of doves flutter down to drink, their wings catching the pale morning light. You watch as a page boy, barely older than 12, tries to balance a tray of honey cakes while tiptoeing across the slick stones. He wobbles, recovers, and grins at you, as if to say, "Welcome to the castle. Try not to slip." The castle doors open with a gentle creak, and you step inside, greeted by the warmth of a crackling fire and the faint aroma of lavender. Tapestries line the walls, their colors faded, but their stories still clear nights and dragons, forests and rivers. And in one corner, a queen with a faraway look in her eyes, a book open in her lap, and a cat curled at her feet. You follow the sound of soft laughter down a corridor, your footsteps muffled by thick rushes scattered on the floor. The castle is a maze of cozy nooks and winding staircases, each turn revealing another glimpse of quiet beauty. A window seat piled with cushions, a shelf of well-thumbed books, a vase of wildflowers picked from the garden. You get the sense that this is a place where daydreams are not just allowed, but encouraged. A gentle voice calls your name, and you turn to see a lady in waiting, her arms full of embroidery and her smile as warm as the fire. "The queen is just waking," she says, "and she'd love some company for her morning daydreams." You nod, feeling a sense of calm settle over you, and follow her deeper into the castle, ready to meet the queen whose dreams have shaped this gentle, sleepy kingdom. You follow the lady in waiting through a winding corridor, the stones beneath your feet worn smooth by centuries of gentle footsteps. The castle is still wrapped in the hush of early morning. The only sounds the soft crackle of distant fires, and the occasional sleepy chirp from a sparrow perched on a windowsill. The air is cool and fresh, carrying the faintest scent of lavender and beeswax from the polished wooden banisters. You pass a tapestry depicting a knight valiantly rescuing a sheep from a puddle scene that seems to sum up the castle's priorities rather nicely. The lady in waiting leads you to a sunlit chamber at the heart of the castle, where the queen's morning rituals unfold with the slow, dreamy grace of a lullaby. The room is warm and inviting, with thick rugs underfoot and a fire crackling in the hearth. Sunbeams filter through stained glass, painting the walls with soft colors rose, gold, and the gentle blue of a cloudless sky. The queen herself sits by the window, wrapped in a velvet robe, her hair tumbling in loose waves over her shoulders. She gazes out at the misty gardens, a half-finished letter in her lap, and a cup of honeyed porridge cradled in her hands. She looks up as you enter, her eyes bright with curiosity and a hint of mischief. "Ah, you've arrived just in time," she says. Her voice is soft as the morning light. "I was about to decide whether to start my day with a poem, a nap, or perhaps a little of both." She gestures for you to join her by the window, and you settle into a cushioned chair, the fabric warm from the sun. There's a legend that the queen once issued a royal decree declaring that all cats in the kingdom were to be treated as honored guests. Some say this led to a brief but memorable period when the castle was overrun with pampered felines, each one convinced it was the true ruler of the realm. Historians still debate whether the queen's fondness for cats was a sign of wisdom or simply a delightful quirk. As the morning drifts on, the queen's thoughts wander from one topic to another. She muses aloud about the shapes of the clouds, the meaning of dreams, and whether it's possible to train a goose to deliver messages. You find yourself relaxing into the gentle rhythm of her conversation, your own worries fading into the background. The queen's daydreams are contagious, and soon you're imagining what it would be like to ride a dragon made of mist, or to host a tea party for the castle's ghosts. The queen's maid returns to clear away the breakfast dishes, and the queen thanks her again, this time remembering to ask about her family. The maid blushes, surprised and pleased, and you realize that the queen's dreamy nature is matched by a quiet kindness that touches everyone around her. Even the castle's sternest guards soften when she passes, their gruff greetings turning into shy smiles. You follow the queen through a narrow, arched doorway and out into the castle gardens, where the world feels softer, quieter, and somehow a little more magical. The morning mist is just beginning to lift, revealing beds of tangled roses, clusters of lavender, and winding paths lined with dew-dappled grass. The air is cool and fragrant, filled with the gentle hum of bees and the distant song of a lark perched high in the apple tree. The queen pauses at the threshold, breathing in deeply, her eyes half closed, as if she's savoring a secret only she and the garden share. She steps onto the path, her slippers barely making a sound on the mossy stones. "I like to think the garden dreams along with me," she says, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "Some mornings, I imagine the roses are really sleeping princesses, waiting for a kind word to wake them. Other days, I'm certain the lavender is plotting to take over the herb beds." She laughs softly, and you can't help but smile at the way her imagination colors every corner of the world. The two of you wander slowly, the queen stopping often to admire a particularly plump bumblebee or to greet a robin hopping along the path. She invents stories for every creature you meet. A butterfly is a lost fairy. A snail is a knight in shining armor, and a pair of quarreling squirrels are rival lords disputing the ownership of a single acorn. You find yourself drawn into her daydreams, the garden transforming before your eyes into a kingdom of gentle wonders. Historians agree that medieval castle gardens were places of both beauty and utility, filled with herbs for the kitchen, flowers for the chapel, and quiet corners for secret meetings. But what most people don't know is that this queen was famous for getting lost in her own gardens, sometimes for hours at a time. There's a story that she once missed an important diplomatic visit because she was busy following a hedgehog through the rose bushes. Some say the visiting ambassador was so charmed by her apology, a poem about the bravery of hedgehogs, that he forgave the slight and sent her a silver acorn as a token of friendship. Historians still wonder if the queen's absent-mindedness was a diplomatic strategy, or simply the result of a mind that preferred stories to schedules. You stroll past a stone bench where a gardener is carefully trimming a topiary in the shape of a sleeping dragon. The queen stops to chat, asking the gardener if the dragon has had any interesting dreams lately. The gardener, used to her questions, replies that the dragon dreamt of flying over the castle and dropping petals on the villagers below. The queen claps her hands in delight, promising to write a song about it later. The gardener bows, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, and returns to his work. A garden is full of hidden corners and secret paths, each one inviting you to linger a little longer. The queen leads you to a small pond, its surface perfectly still, except for the occasional ripple from a curious fish. She sits on the edge, trailing her fingers in the cool water, and tells you about the time she tried to teach the frogs to sing in harmony. They were very enthusiastic, she says, but not terribly musical. Still, I think they enjoyed the effort. The queen rises, brushing grass from her robe, and invites you to follow her back toward the castle. There's always something new to discover, she says, even if it's just a different way of seeing the same old roses. You walk together, the garden's peace lingering in your heart, ready to meet the dreamy courtiers who share the queen's. You and the queen re-enter the castle through a side door. The cool stone walls a gentle contrast to the sun-warmed gardens. The corridors are alive with the soft shuffle of slippers and the quiet murmur of voices. But there's no rush here, just the slow, steady rhythm of a place that has learned to move at the queen's pace. Tapestries flutter in the draught, their threads catching the light and casting colorful patterns on the floor. You notice that nearly every tapestry features a dreamy figure, sometimes the queen herself, sometimes a cat, sometimes a flock of geese in tiny crowns. The queen leads you to the great hall, where her courtiers are gathered in a loose, comfortable circle. There's no stiff formality here. Instead, the courtiers lounge on cushions and benches, sipping spiced cider and nibbling on honey cakes. Some are embroidering, others are reading, and a few are simply gazing out the tall windows, lost in their own thoughts. The queen's presence is met with gentle smiles and a few sleepy bows. One courtier, a young woman with ink-stained fingers, looks up from her parchment and says, "Your Majesty, I've written a poem about the cloud shaped like a sheep we saw yesterday." The queen claps her hands in delight, eager to hear it. You settle in among the courtiers, feeling the warmth of the fire and the easy camaraderie that fills the room. The queen listens to the poem, her eyes shining with appreciation, and then launches into a story about a dream she had where the castle floated away on a river of stars. The courtiers listen with rapt attention, some nodding, others jotting down notes for their own stories later. It's clear that the queen's daydreams are the lifeblood of the court, inspiring creativity and kindness in equal measure. Historians agree that medieval courts were often centers of intrigue and ambition, but what most people don't know is that this queen's court was famous for its gentle, absent-minded spirit. There's a story that the queen once forgot to sign a royal decree, so the court scribe added a doodle of a sleeping cat instead. The decree was still honored, and the cat became an unofficial symbol of the kingdom's easygoing nature. Some say the queen's forgetfulness led to a golden age of peace, as no one could remember what they were supposed to be arguing about. Historians still wonder if the queen's dreamy leadership was a stroke of genius or simply a happy accident. You notice that the courtiers themselves are a whimsical bunch. One is knitting a scarf for the castle's resident goose. Another is composing a lullaby for the kitchen mice. And a third is carefully painting tiny flowers on the handles of the queen's favorite teacups. The queen moves among them, offering gentle encouragement and the occasional daydream of her own. She asks the court jester if he's invented any new jokes, and he replies, "Only one, but I forgot the punchline." The Queen laughs, declaring it the best joke she's heard all week. There's a legend that the Queen once held a contest to see who could come up with the most imaginative excuse for being late to court. The winning entry involved a dragon, a rainstorm, and a particularly stubborn hedgehog. The Queen was so delighted that she awarded the winner a golden acorn and declared a holiday in their honor. Some say the holiday is still celebrated in the quieter corners of the kingdom, where daydreamers are always welcome. As the afternoon sun slants through the windows, the Queen and her courtiers drift from one gentle activity to another. Someone starts a game of chess, but the pieces are soon forgotten in favor of a discussion about whether knights or bishops would make better bakers. A Queen listens, her head tilted thoughtfully, and suggests that perhaps the best baker would be a dragon after all. Who else could keep the ovens warm? You find yourself relaxing into the dreamy atmosphere, your own thoughts growing softer and slower. The Queen's absent-mindedness is contagious, and soon you're imagining what it would be like to host a feast for the castle's ghosts, or to teach the royal geese to dance. The courtiers encourage your ideas, adding their own twists and turns, until the room is filled with gentle laughter and the quiet joy of shared imagination. As the light fades and the fire burns low, the Queen rises and stretches, her robe trailing behind her like a cloud. "Thank you, my friends," she says, "for making the world a little dreamier." She invites you to join her for the Royal Council meeting, promising that it will be more interesting than most, especially if she forgets what's on the agenda. You follow her from the hall, the courtiers waiting sleepily, their minds already wandering to new stories and dreams. The castle feels even cozier now, wrapped in the warmth of daydreams and the gentle certainty that here, in this kingdom, imagination is always in charge. You follow the Queen down a winding corridor, the stone walls echoing with the soft tap of her slippers and the distant, muffled laughter of the court. The Royal Council Chamber is not the grand, intimidating room you might expect. Instead, it's a cozy space with a round table, mismatched chairs, and a scattering of cushions for anyone who prefers to sit on the floor. Sunlight pours in through tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the air, as if even the dust is in no hurry to settle. The council members are already gathered, each one as unique and gently eccentric as the Queen herself. There's the royal treasurer, who is rumored to keep a secret stash of candied almonds in his ledger. The steward, who always brings a basket of fresh apples to share, and the castle's official historian, who is currently embroidering a scene of a goose jousting with a snail. The Queen greets them all with a dreamy smile, settling into her favorite chair, a plush seat with a faded cushion embroidered with the words, "Don't wake the Queen." The meeting begins, as always, with a moment of quiet reflection. The Queen gazes out the window, her mind clearly wandering far beyond the castle walls. The steward clears his throat and begins to read the day's agenda, but the Queen interrupts with a question about whether clouds ever get tired of floating. The council members exchange fond smiles, used to these gentle detours. The treasurer suggests that perhaps clouds take naps behind the mountains, and the historian offers to research the matter, though he admits he's not sure where to start. Historians agree that medieval councils were often tense affairs, filled with arguments and urgent decisions. But what most people don't know is that this Queen's Council meetings were famous for their meandering pace and unexpected creativity. There's a story that the Queen once solved a dispute over land boundaries by suggesting the two lords involved plant a hedge maze and see who could find their way out first. Some say the resulting maze became a favorite spot for secret picnics and daydreams. Historians still wonder if the Queen's whimsical approach to governance was a stroke of genius, or simply a happy accident that kept everyone too charmed to argue. As the meeting continues, the Queen's daydreams lead to a series of surprisingly creative royal decrees. She suggests that every village in the kingdom should have a festival celebrating its favorite animal, and that the castle kitchens should experiment with new pie recipes inspired by the colors of the sunset. The council members dutifully jot down her ideas, some of which are met with quiet enthusiasm, others with gentle confusion. The steward asks if the royal geese can be excused from wearing hats at the next parade, and the Queen, after a moment's thought, agrees, unless the geese request hats themselves, of course. There's a legend that the Queen once decreed that all meetings must end with a story or a song. The tradition stuck, and now, as the council meeting winds down, the historian stands and recites a tale about a knight who fell asleep in a field of poppies and dreamed he was a butterfly. The Queen listens with a faraway smile, her eyes half closed, and when the story ends, she thanks the council and invites everyone to join her for a walk in the gardens, if they can remember the way. You leave the council chamber feeling lighter, the worries of the world softened by the Queen's gentle leadership. The castle seems to hum with quiet contentment, as if every stone and tapestry is grateful for a ruler who values dreams as much as decisions. The Queen links her arm through yours, her touch warm and reassuring. Sometimes, she says, the best ideas come when you're not looking for them at all. As you walk together through the sunlit halls, you realize that in this kingdom, daydreams are not a distraction. They're a way of life. The Queen's absent-mindedness is a gift, a gentle reminder that there is beauty in wandering thoughts and wisdom in the quiet spaces between decisions. You follow her up a spiral staircase, the air growing cooler and the light softer as you climb. At the top, a small wooden door waits, leading to the Queen's favorite retreat, a place where dreams are always welcome, and the world outside can wait just a little longer. The Queen leads you up the spiral staircase, her hand gliding along the smooth, time-worn banister. Each step creaks softly, echoing through the stone tower as you climb higher and higher, leaving the gentle bustle of the castle below. The air grows cooler, tinged with the scent of old parchment, dried lavender, and a hint of beeswax from the candles that line the narrow windowsills. At the very top, the Queen pauses before a small wooden door, its surface carved with winding vines and tiny, sleeping animals, a secret entrance to her most cherished retreat. She opens the door with a quiet flourish, revealing a round sunlit chamber filled with the softest light. The room is a haven of comfort and imagination. Shelves overflowing with books and scrolls, a low table scattered with half-finished letters and pressed flowers, and a window seat piled high with velvet cushions and patchwork quilts. The walls are painted with gentle scenes, clouds drifting over green hills, a moonlit lake, a cat curled up on a windowsill. The Queen's favorite chair, a deep, overstuffed armchair, sits beside a small writing desk, its surface cluttered with ink pots, quills, and a teacup that's gone cold. This is where I come to think, or not think at all, the Queen says, her voice soft and content. She settles into the armchair, tucking her feet beneath her and patting the cushion beside her in invitation. You join her, sinking into the cozy seat, feeling the gentle embrace of the room wrap around you like a warm blanket. The Queen pours you a cup of herbal tea from a delicate pot, the steam curling in the golden light. Sometimes I read, sometimes I write letters I never send, and sometimes I just watch the clouds and let my mind wander wherever it pleases. Historians agree that medieval queens often had private chambers for prayer or study, but what most people don't know is that this queen's tower was a sanctuary for daydreams. There's a story that she once spent an entire afternoon composing a lullaby for the castle mice, only to fall asleep halfway through the second verse. Some say the mice finished the song themselves, and that it's still sung in the quiet corners of the castle on rainy days. Historians still wonder if the Queen's dreamy solitude was a sign of wisdom or simply a gentle rebellion against the demands of royal life. The Queen invites you to explore her retreat. You wander the room, running your fingers along the spines of well-loved books, tales of distant lands, poems about the moon, and stories of brave queens who ruled with kindness and a touch of whimsy. On the windowsill, a collection of smooth stones and feathers glows in the sunlight, each one a souvenir from a walk in the garden or a gift from a thoughtful courtier. A small hand-drawn map of the kingdom hangs above the desk, but it's covered in doodles, dragons in the forests, mermaids in the lakes, and a tiny crown perched on the castle roof. The Queen sighs contentedly, gazing out the window at the rolling hills beyond the castle walls. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to travel beyond the horizon, she muses, to see what lies in the forests, or to follow the river all the way to the sea. But then I remember that there are so many adventures to be found right here, in a good book or a quiet afternoon. There's a legend that the Queen once invited the entire court to her tower for a festival of daydreams. Everyone was required to bring a story, a song, or a wish, and the day was spent sharing dreams and laughter until the stars came out. Some say the festival became an annual tradition, a day when even the busiest courtiers set aside their duties to celebrate the gentle magic of imagination. Historians still debate whether the festival was a clever way to encourage creativity or simply an excuse for the Queen to avoid paperwork. As the afternoon light grows softer, the Queen curls up with a book, her eyes growing heavy. She invites you to rest as well, offering a patchwork quilt and a pillow that smells faintly of lavender. There's no better place for a nap than a tower full of dreams, she says, her voice drifting into a yawn. You settle in, the quiet of the room wrapping around you, and soon you find yourself drifting, your thoughts floating like clouds across a sunlit sky. The world outside fades to a gentle hush, and for a while there is nothing but the soft rustle of pages, the distant call of a dove, and the peaceful certainty that here, in the Queen's secret tower, daydreams are always welcome, and rest is never far away. You wake to the gentle sound of laughter and the distant clatter of dishes, sunlight now slanting golden through the tower window. The Queen is already up, smoothing her hair and straightening her robe, her eyes bright with anticipation. "It's nearly time for the evening feast," she says, her voice still soft with the remnants of sleep. "But don't worry, no one expects us to hurry." She offers you her hand, and together you descend the spiral staircase, the air growing warmer and more fragrant with every step. The great hall is transformed for the feast, its long tables draped in linen and scattered with wildflowers from the garden. Candles flicker in iron sconces, casting a soft glow over platters of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and pies filled with apples and honey. The courtiers gather slowly, some still yawning, others already deep in conversation about the day's dreams and discoveries. The Queen takes her place at the head of the table, but there is no formality. Here just the easy comfort of friends, sharing a meal at the end of a gentle day. You settle beside her, the hum of conversation and the clink of goblets creating a soothing background music. The Queen raises her cup in a sleepy toast to dreams, to stories, and to the joy of not always paying attention. The courtiers laugh, some raising their own cups, others too busy buttering bread or sneaking treats to the castle cats curled beneath the table. Historians agree that medieval feasts were grand affairs, filled with music, dancing, and endless courses. But what most people don't know is that this Queen's banquets were famous for their slow pace and whimsical spirit. There's a story that she once forgot to start the meal with a prayer, so the court jester improvised a blessing for full bellies and empty schedules. Some say the Queen was so delighted that she made it a tradition, and now every feast begins with a new silly blessing. Historians still wonder if the Queen's relaxed approach to dining was a clever way to encourage peace, or simply a reflection of her dreamy heart. The meal unfolds in a series of gentle waves platters, passed from hand to hand, stories shared between bites, and laughter bubbling up like a spring. The Queen listens to her courtiers' tales, sometimes drifting off into her own thoughts, only to return with a whimsical toast or a question about whether apples taste sweeter by candlelight. She spills her goblet at least once, but no one minds. A page boy quickly mops it up, and the Queen rewards him with a smile and a promise to write a poem about heroic napkins. There's a legend that the Queen once declared a feast of forgetfulness, where everyone was encouraged to leave their worries at the door and focus only on the pleasures of the table. The kitchens prepared dishes inspired by dreams, cloud-shaped meringues, moonbeam soup, and a cake decorated with candied violets. Some say the feast lasted until dawn, with guests napping between courses and waking only for dessert. Historians still debate whether the moonbeam soup was truly magical, or if it was just very good and making people sleepy. As the evening deepens, the hall grows quieter, the conversation turning to softer topics, favorite dreams, gentle hopes, and the beauty of a world where not every moment needs to be remembered. The queen leans back in her chair, her eyes half closed, and listens to the music of spoons tapping bowls and the low murmur of contented voices. She invites you to share a story, and as you speak, you feel the warmth of the hall, the kindness of the company, and the gentle approval of a queen who values imagination above all else. The feast winds down with a final toast, the queen raising her cup to the moon shining through the high windows. To dreams that wander, and to hearts that follow, she says, her voice barely more than a whisper. The courtiers echo her words, and for a moment, the whole castle seems to pause, wrapped in the soft magic of a night that promises only peace. You leave the hall with the queen, your steps slow and content, the memory of laughter and gentle conversation lingering like the taste of honey on your tongue. The castle is quiet now, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl and the soft sigh of the wind through the towers. The queen smiles at you, her eyes shining with gratitude and sleepiness. "Thank you for sharing this day with me," she says. "There's nothing lovelier than a feast shared with friends and a little bit of daydreaming." The feast has left the castle in a gentle hush, a kind that settles over old stone and sleepy hearts as night deepens. You and the queen step out into the courtyard, the air cool and fresh, carrying the scent of damp earth and the last traces of wildflowers. Lanterns flicker along the walls, their golden light mingling with the silver of the rising moon. The queen draws her cloak around her shoulders, her breath visible in the crisp air, and invites you to walk with her beneath the stars. The courtyard is quiet, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant trickle of the fountain. The queen moves slowly, her steps unhurried, as if she's savoring every moment of the night. She pauses by the old stone well, gazing up at the sky. "I like to think the stars are the dreams we forget during the day," she says, her voice barely louder than the breeze. "They wait for us here, shining quietly, until we're ready to remember them again." You stroll together along the garden paths, the moonlight painting everything in gentle shades of blue and silver. The queen's mind wanders aloud, her thoughts drifting from the shape of the clouds to the stories hidden in the constellations. She wonders if the moon ever gets lonely, or if it's content to watch over the world in silence. She tells you about a dream she once had, where the castle floated among the stars, and everyone inside learned to waltz with the comets. Historians agree that medieval queens often found solace in the quiet of night, using the stillness to reflect on the day's events. But what most people don't know is that this queen was known for her moonlit walks, sometimes inviting her courtiers to join her for midnight picnics or impromptu poetry readings. There's a story that she once convinced the entire court to sleep outside under the stars, just to see if dreams were sweeter in the open air. Some say the experiment led to a week of gentle chaos, with everyone waking up in the wrong beds and the castle cats claiming the best pillows. Historians still debate whether the queen's love of starlight was a sign of wisdom or simply a delightful excuse to avoid bedtime. You pause by a low stone wall, the queen settling beside you, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. She gazes at the moon, her eyes reflecting its soft glow. Sometimes I think the world is at its kindest when everyone is a little bit sleepy, she muses. We speak more softly, we listen more closely, and we remember that it's all right to let our thoughts wander. There's a legend that the queen once wrote a letter to the moon, asking for advice on how to be a better ruler. The next morning, she found a single white feather on her windowsill and took it as a sign to lead with gentleness and imagination. Some say she kept the feather in her journal, a quiet reminder that even the smallest dreams can light the way. But tonight, the queen seems in no hurry to return indoors. She lingers on the wall, her gaze drifting from the moon to the shadowy shapes of the garden hedges, now transformed into mysterious creatures by the silver light. Do you ever wonder, she asks, if the trees remember every story whispered beneath their branches? Or if the roses dream of blooming in colors no one has ever seen? Her questions are soft, almost as if she's speaking to the night itself. You listen, letting her words settle over you like a warm blanket. The garden feels enchanted, every leaf and petal touched by moonlight and possibility. Somewhere nearby, a hedgehog rustles through the undergrowth, and the queen smiles, imagining it on a secret midnight adventure. She tells you about the time she tried to follow a hedgehog through the garden, only to lose her way and discover a hidden patch of violets she'd never seen before. Sometimes, she says, getting lost is the best way to find something wonderful. The two of you sit in companionable silence, the world around you slowing to a peaceful hush. The queen's thoughts drift to the future, to the dreams she hopes will visit her tonight. I think I'll dream of flying, she says, or maybe of a feast where every guest is a different kind of bird. Wouldn't it be lovely to hear their stories? She laughs softly, the sound blending with the night breeze. As the moon climbs higher, the queen grows quieter, her eyelids heavy with sleep. She thanks you again for your company, her words gentle and sincere. It's easier to dream when you have someone to share the stars with, she says. Promise me, you'll always make time for a little daydreaming, even when the world is busy. You promise, and together you watch the stars a little longer, the night wrapping around you both in a gentle embrace. The castle behind you glows softly, a beacon of warmth and welcome in the cool darkness. When at last you rise to return indoors, the queen squeezes your hand, her gratitude shining brighter than any lantern. As you walk back through the quiet halls, you carry the peace of the night with you, the memory of moonlight and gentle words lingering like a lullaby. The queen's daydreams, her kindness, and her wonder have become your own. And you know that, wherever you go, you'll always remember this night beneath the stars. The courtyard grows quieter still, the castle windows glowing softly in the night. The queen leans her head on your shoulder, her voice growing drowsy. Thank you for walking with me, she says. It's easier to dream when you have someone to share the stars with. You sit together in companionable silence, the world around you slowing to a peaceful hush. As the moon climbs higher, the queen stands and takes your hand, leading you back toward the castle. Let's find our way to bed, she whispers, before the stars decide to keep us awake with their stories. You follow her inside, the warmth of the castle wrapping around you, the memory of moonlight and gentle words lingering like a lullaby. The castle is nearly silent as you and the queen return from your moonlit stroll, the halls dimly lit by the last flickering lanterns. The air inside is warm and still, carrying the faint scent of lavender and beeswax from the candles, and the gentle hush of a place where everyone has finally surrendered to sleep. The queen leads you up a wide staircase, her slippers making only the softest sound on the worn stone steps. You pass closed doors behind which courtiers and servants dream their own gentle dreams, the castle wrapped in a blanket of peace. At the top of the stairs, you reach the queen's private chambers, a cozy suite of rooms filled with soft light and softer shadows. The bed is piled high with quilts and pillows, a small fire crackles in the hearth, and a window stands open to the night, letting in a cool breeze and the distant song of a nightingale. The queen moves about her room with the slow, graceful movements of someone who is both tired and content, her robe trailing behind her like a cloud. She invites you to sit by the fire, offering you a cup of warm milk sweetened with honey and a plate of tiny almond cakes dusted with sugar. "A little something to help you sleep," she says, her voice gentle and kind. You settle into a cushioned chair, the warmth of the fire and the sweetness of the milk making your eyelids grow heavy. The queen sits across from you, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze soft and thoughtful. "Of course. Here's your passage, gently extended to twice its original length, with more sensory detail, warmth, and dreamy closure perfect for a bedtime wind down." Historians agree that medieval queens often ended their days in quiet reflection, writing letters or reading by candlelight. But what most people don't know is that this queen was famous for her bedtime rituals, inviting friends and guests to share a final story or a gentle wish before sleep. There's a story that she once declared every night in the castle should end with a blessing for peaceful dreams, and that even the castle cats would gather by the hearth to listen. Some say the tradition continues with every guest who stays in the castle leaving a wish beneath their pillow for the next dreamer to find. Historians still wonder if the queen's nightly blessings were a clever way to encourage kindness, or simply a reflection of her endlessly gentle heart. Tonight, the queen's chamber glows with the soft light of a dozen candles, their flames flickering in the gentle draft from the open window. The air is filled with the scent of lavender and beeswax, and the quiet crackle of the fire in the hearth. The queen sits in her favorite chair, a thick quilt draped over her lap, her slippers resting on a small embroidered footstool. She invites you to sit beside her, offering a cup of warm milk sweetened with honey and a plate of tiny almond cakes, dusted with sugar and still warm from the kitchens. There's a legend that the queen once dreamed of a garden where every flower bloomed in a different color each night, and that she woke to find a single rainbow-hued rose on her windowsill. She pressed it between the pages of her favorite book, a secret reminder that dreams sometimes leave gifts behind. Some say the rose is still there, its colors as bright as ever, waiting for the next dreamer to discover it. The queen tells you this story in a voice as gentle as the night, her words weaving a tapestry of wonder and hope. You finish your milk, the warmth settling deep in your bones. The queen wishes you good night, her blessing as light as a feather. She tucks the quilt around your shoulders, her touch gentle and reassuring, and you slip beneath the softest covers, the fire's glow flickering on the walls. The castle is quiet, the world outside hushed, and you feel yourself floating gently toward sleep. As you drift off, you hear the queen's voice one last time, a whisper in the darkness. May your dreams be gentle, and may you always find a little magic in the quiet moments. The night wraps around you, safe and warm, and the daydreaming queen's kingdom settles into a perfect, peaceful hush. You feel the softness of the pillow beneath your head, the gentle weight of the quilt, and the steady, comforting rhythm of your own breath. The sounds of the castle fade into the background, the distant crackle of the fire, the soft sigh of the wind at the window, the faint purr of a cat curled at your feet. You sense the presence of all the wishes left beneath pillows, all the stories whispered into the night, and you know you are part of something gentle and good. The queen's blessing lingers in the air, a promise that kindness and dreams will always have a home here. You let yourself drift, your thoughts growing lighter, your heart at peace. The world outside may be full of noise and hurry, but here, in the quiet heart of the castle, you are safe, cherished, and free to dream. And as sleep finally claims you, you carry with you the memory of the queen's gentle voice, the warmth of her kindness, and the certainty that, in this kingdom of daydreams, every night ends with hope, and every morning begins with the promise of another gentle story.